was 1956, the year the story of the Kingsmen truly began. Before the hits, before the awards, before the treasured history, there were 4 brothers. But it wasn't quite serious then. It was a distraction from life. The Korean War had just wrapped up, a new America was happening, and the group started way before the name Kingsmen with the McKinney Brothers.
February of 56, we used to have the 4 of the McKinney Brothers was singing as the McKinney Brothers. Lewis, he was the oldest one, and he left the quartet and went to Florida to work. And we got Jack Henderson. Jack started singing first tenor. So we sang that way until Jack went in service.
I think back to those early days. Those were guys that just wanted to sing. They didn't really have any game plan far as we're going to go out, we're going to make it big in gospel music or anything. They just loved it. They just wanted to do it. And really, that's you. First off, you got to love the Lord. You got to love Jesus, and He's got to live in your heart to really make this believable, because it's just impossible otherwise. But that's really where it begins. You have to be willing to just want to sing. You don't go out to make money necessarily. You don't go out to make your name known all across the nation. You just do it because you love to do it, and you can't not do it. And I think that's kind of where it began with the McKinney Brothers.
Lewis found work and moved to Florida, but the remaining boys wanted to keep the plow going, and they were determined to keep going. With the shifting lineup came 2 new names, Charles Collier and a new pianist, Charles Matthews. Charles Matthews wasn't just a piano player, he was a visionary. Matthews had a creative mind, he was always thinking, and he was a clever songwriter. In fact, his song, If Everybody Prays, was later recorded by Jake Hess and the Imperials. So it should be no surprise that it was Matthews and his creativity that coined the name the Kingsmen.
This lady that lived over in Asheville, she had a boarding. She took care of people having trouble. She had Charles Matthews and Charles Collier. My brother Everett, after about the middle of 56, he left the quartet. So my brother Lewis was still working in Florida, and I asked if he wanted to come back, sing with the Kingsmen Quartet. Lewis said, yeah. I said, will you come down and ride back with me? I got on the trailway bus and rode to Baritone, Florida. I thought, I got to Jacksonville. I thought, man, this is nothing to it. And I rode another half a day out there.
On July 3rd, 1956, the group recorded a 45 record on the local Stars label. Unfortunately, it was released under a misspelled name, the Kingsmen. The A-side was the song from Charles Matthews, If Everybody Prays. And on the B-side, a rock and roll inspired tune called Bow to the King of Kings. Still, those boys from Asheville were making history, and they didn't even realize it. However, the foundation of a future legacy was still fragile. Service in the military took men in and out of the group, and the departure of Charles Matthews brought the Kingsmen to a screeching halt. For a moment, the quartet seemed to be destined to be only a blip in time. Something the McKinney brothers dreamed of would be cut short. Then came little David Young, a gifted Mars Hill College student who brought life back to the music of the Kingsmen. Although his time with the group was short, his time in Asheville would later cement him as a legend of gospel music. He would go on to play with many historic gospel groups, most notably the Couriers Quartet. After Young's graduation from college, the Kingsmen were once again left without a pianist.
I went to the Army. Harold Bailey took my place, and L.D. Young was going to Mars Hill College and how they found out about him, but he was a great. I got out of the Army in 6 months. LD had evidently finished college, and he left.
David Young was going to Mars Hill College at the time. He actually come from the mountains near where I grew up. I grew up in Hiawassee, Georgia, and LD Young grew up in over near Unaka, North Carolina. That's about 20 miles from Murphy, way back in the woods. But he ended up at Mars Hill College, and he was just about to finish up. But he was going to school there. They needed a piano player, and he was just I don't think Raymond even remembers how they found him. He was just ready to go, and so he spent about the last 5 or 6 months that he was in Mars Hill College with the Kingsmen. And then when he graduated, he ended up moving to the Atlanta area, and then later to Pennsylvania because he was with the Couriers. Later went on and played a lot of sessions for Canaan Records. A lot of the songs that he played, you might hear his piano playing on some of the Happy Goodman records during the 1960s. And so he's placed his stamp on gospel music, no doubt. But those very early days while he was in Mars Hill College.
July 1957 brought revival to the Kingsmen. Raymond returned from the service, and a young man from the area, Frank Cutshaw, a soon-to-be respected member of Kingsmen history, would join the group.
I think probably the finest voice that I had heard, and probably still have ever heard, is Frank Cutshaw.
Of course, Eddie and Frank were really close, Frank Cutshaw. He and Frank stayed with him the longest.
And then came a name that would echo throughout Southern gospel music history, Martin Cook. Martin, a young pianist from Caney Fork, North Carolina, would later create a group called the Inspirations. But in 1957, he was the Kingsmen's lifeline in a time of uncertainty. During this time, the quartet was inching toward a pivotal moment, and God's guidance was on full display, especially about the time of the arrival of one man who would become a pillar of the Kingsmen Quartet and Southern gospel music. His name, Eldridge Fox.
From the time Mama put me up on the piano stool to sing for the talent show, I always wanted to sing quartet music. I remember going to see the Rangers and the Chuck Wagon Gang when I was about 5, I guess, in Asheville, North Carolina. I tell you what boys will do they shouldn't. Nobody had enough money to get in. We'd take up a collection amongst us and buy one ticket, and somebody'd go in and drop it out of the window upstairs. I'm telling you the truth. And then somebody else would go in. My fondest memory, I couldn't begin to tell you, because even it's the worst, it's fantastic. Only heaven will be better. I'd never change a thing.
Well, we were raised up together, and his wife and I graduated from high school together. They weren't married at the time, but I'm saying we graduated from the same school. And of course, he was local. And his mama had a cafe over in Asheville. And we always all together there after singing and had food. But he was just a good friend. And I love that man.
His dream became our dream, became 70 years of people sacrificing and doing,
Foxy was a great boss. Not only was he a great boss, he was a great mentor, but he was a great friend. I remember my son was very young, and we'd moved from Indiana to join the Kingsmen, and we were in Foxy's office one day, and my son might have been 5 years old, maybe 6. Foxy yelled for us to come into his office, and I remember he had on Foxy's desk there was like $25 or $26 worth of change, And he said, "Come over here, young man," to my son. And he loaded up his pockets full of change. He gave me pockets full of change. And we're walking out. I'm trying to hold my pants up. I had so much change in my pocket. And so I took my son to the local arcade. We played games, and I bought him a hot dog and popcorn and a drink with just change that Fox had given us. But Fox was so encouraging. When I first joined in '96, he would still ride the bus. And after the concert, I remember one night he came up and said, "Well, people said they really like you. They can't hear you." And I said, "Well, they're going to have to turn me up." I said, with Chris Collins and Parker Jonathan and Ray, they had volume, and I was not used to that because I had come from a group that mainly sang with soundtracks. And here we've got a live band. And those guys sang hard and loud, and so it took me a while to develop my voice where I could get the volume. But Fox would say, "You're doing a great job, young man. You just keep it up." But he was he was an encourager. And he encouraged me a lot in my voice, and but Fox was such a mentor. You could go to him, and he was approachable. He was very approachable, and he had a heart for Jesus and a heart for this music, and had a heart. He loved his guys. He loved his boys. He called them his boys. So he loved us.
Of course, my dad. Not because he's my dad, but he was pretty amazing.
Foxy wasn't just a singer. He was a strategist, a dreamer, a businessman with a passion for gospel music. He traveled, he learned, he networked, and when he joined the Kingsmen, his influence reshaped not just the quartet, but the sound and business of gospel music itself. In 1959, Foxy briefly left to sing with the nationally known Sheriff's Quartet, but his short departure opened the door for another key figure, Ray Talley.
My name is Ray Talley. I am a Baptist minister. After I left the Kingsmen, to go into full-time ministry. And I began with the Kingsmen in the early 1960s. I had graduated from college, moved to Asheville, North Carolina, working in a factory, and I was approached about a year after I had moved to Asheville, and Jack Henderson, who was managing the Kingsmen, singing tenor at that time, said they needed a piano player, and so I went and sat down and tried out with them, and that's how I began with the King.
During this time, the Kingsmen recorded their first album, What Love?
If I remember right, it was recorded at maybe Piedmont Studios, but it was in a man's basement. He had a recording studio, and just with the piano and the singers, all of it at one time. There was no going back and doing a track or anything. It was all one time, good or bad.
Huh.
And that was the first album. And then from there, they got a little bit better.
The lineup of Jack Henderson, Frank Cutshaw, Raymond McKinney, Reese McKinney, and Ray Talley was featured on that album. Later that year, the same lineup returned to Piedmont Records to release New Jerusalem. They had no idea that these early recordings were providing the groundwork for something far bigger. By 1962, the Kingsmen were at Skylight Records, a joint venture of the Blackwood Brothers and the Statesmen. At the same time, Foxy was working in the Statesman's office, learning the business side of gospel music. Maybe his Asheville friends, also known as the Kingsmen, came up in conversation. And maybe that connection helped open the door to something even bigger. Skylight was a major step.
Statesman started Skylight Records. Brock Spear was one of the producers, or the main producer for Skylight Records. So Blackwood, Statesman, Spear family, they started bringing in groups like the Oak Ridge Quartet, the Prophets, and the Rangers Trio, and the Weatherfords, and they brought in the Kingsmen, and they recorded, I believe it's Closer to Thee was the very first album they recorded.
We're singing only in churches. We had no intention or aspirations of going professional, and it just kind of crept up on us over the years. But we just enjoyed singing, and those four guys had been together for a long time. Raymond and Reese McKinney, and Frank Cutshaw and Jack Henderson, and so they were really close and did good work together. And then when I joined them, we stayed together for a good long while, and not because I was a member of the group, but during that time, some circumstances and events came about that gave us the opportunity to broaden our horizons. And so the Bob Poole program started, and it was syndicated throughout the United States and Canada and Alaska. And we would go every week and record that film that television program at WFBC TV in Greenville, South Carolina. And that's how we got started. And then from that, we were asked to go to little bigger venues. And that kept growing until finally we were doing as much on weekends as a lot of the full-time groups were doing, because in those days it was difficult to make a living if you were a full-time gospel singer.
You got off key, Ray. You missed it. Are we?
I didn't miss it. Are we on?
Yeah, we're on. We were practicing here.
Yes,
and I was trying to get Ray's timing down a little bit.
I need all the help I can get.
You know,
Not that kind.
Speaking of help, I was talking to Bill Hefner on one of our shows not long ago. I got a new car. Yeah. And Bill said it was the only car without a spare tire because the payment book took up the whole trunk.
True.
You ready to sing?
I'm ready to. Well, you want me to sing?
When are you going to sing that Getaway Satan or whatever you used to sing?
I'll sing that next week.
Will you sure now?
Yeah. I'll do
all right,
that
I'd like to. Oh, you're teaching him another one, huh, Jack? Mm-hmm. Well, here are the Kingsmen right now, and I better get out of the way, and I've forgotten what you were going to do.
This is called That's Why I've Got to Sing.
Oh, yeah, I like this. That's Why I Got to Sing, the Kingsmen from Asheville, North Carolina.
When we was the Bob Poole gospel favorite, and we was on, I don't know, we was somebody said sometime maybe 80, 90 stations from here to California.
Bob Poole wanted a gospel TV show. No one believed it would work. Sunday morning television wasn't a thing back then, but Poole didn't listen to the experts. And on October 8th, 1961, Bob Poole's Gospel Favorites aired its first episode, and it became an instant sensation. It quickly had more viewers than any program on any station in America in that time slot. For the Kingsmen, this was the moment that the spotlight truly brightened. The little group from Asheville now had a national audience, and the name Kingsmen was beginning to travel out of the mountains. In 1962, the Kingsmen were invited to appear on Southern gospel music's biggest stage, the National Quartet Convention. The Kingsmen's performance was included on the live album released by the NQC that year. And adding to the excitement of the year 1962, the Kingsmen were invited to go on tour with the Statesmen, giving the Kingsmen the opportunity to learn from the best of the very best. On the next studio album, the Kingsmen were joined by familiar names from the convention, Brock and Ben Spear.
That was a real break for us. I don't remember exactly how we got the contract to go to Nashville and record that album, but in the deal, it was to give us Brock and Ben as our musicians. And Brock played the guitar, and just an open acoustical guitar, and Ben played the upright bass. And I played piano, and I think I've told you this story before, but I did pretty good, except on one song, and I never could get it right. And Ben Spear was such a gentleman and so nice to me that he never tried to correct me and straighten me out until finally he had had enough. And he very kindly said to me, "Why don't you try this?" And what you hear is what he taught me.
My first record deals Dad's not on those records. That's those first record deals. Those were produced by Brock and Ben Spear. In fact, Brock and Ben are on one of the records called Kingsmen Sound. Yeah. That's right. They're sitting on the cover with the Coca-Cola.
The Kingsmen Sound would be the last album for Reese McKinney, one of the group's founders, opening the door for Calvin Runyon at the bass position.
I guess when he started to sing, Reese was probably, to me, one of the finest, best singers there was in the business. I mean, as far as I was concerned.
The Kingsmen sound was evolving, and you could hear it on their next album, the one that debuted a phrase that would follow the Kingsmen for decades, from the land in the sky. But it was also during this time that the group found themselves without a pianist. As always, God's timing was perfect, and the right man had a familiar face. Eldridge Fox came back for what would become nearly 40 years of service, and the history of what many know now as the modern Kingsmen was about to begin. In 1966, Raymond McKinney became the last of the McKinney Brothers to step away from the quartet. But still to this day, he is proud of the legacy and heritage he and his brothers created.
I was with the Kingsmen for the first 10 years of the group's existence, and I had no idea what we were starting. I just never imagined.
Later on, some of those early Kingsmen would form a reunion quartet called the Land of the Sky Boys. Rest assured that the name McKinney will forever be fondly remembered on the platform of the Kingsmen. That same year, the Kingsmen also said farewell to longtime tenor and manager Jack Henderson. This closed the door on one chapter and opened the door to another. Foxy was in the driver's seat for the very first time, and he hired Kermit Jamerson for the tenor position, and Ray Talley came back to play piano. He also helped Foxy with the MC work. And from 1966 to 1970, the group's lineup held steady. But there was one addition in 1967 that would go on to create a legacy within a legacy. His arrival would be a massive part of the history of the Kingsmen Quartet forever.
Ray Dean Reese, it take 57 years to do that.
This man has nearly 6 decades of service with the Kingsmen, and his name, Ray Dean Reese.
God has given me the desires of my heart. I've always dreamed of singing with a gospel quartet, and I've been with the Kingsmen for 57 years, and I'm just tickled to pink. I don't go as much now because my legs are not working like they should, but they're getting there. I have been blessed. God has healed me of cancer, and I'm just happy as the Lord.
His name is spoken with the same reverence as the Kingsmen Quartet itself. At just 28 years old, the young drill sergeant from Asheville stepped into the bass position following the departure of Calvin Runyon. What he didn't know then was that this temporary chapter would become his life's calling. Today, at the age of 86, Ray Dean Reese stands as living proof that God truly grants the desires of a faithful heart.
A real mentor to me. I'll never forget when I first joined. He was a bass singer, but he was also my friend. And then when I returned to the Kingsmen in 2007, he was now my boss. But he never acted that way. He never ruled with an iron fist. He never demanded things. He was the boss, and we knew that, and I respected him from years of being his friend first. And even after I left the Kingsmen a second time, I still talk to Ray every couple of weeks, and he is probably one of the best men that I've ever known. My mom often asked about him, and I'll never forget, the Kingsmen came to and sang at my dad's funeral in 1999. The guys did, and that meant so much to me. And even after my dad passed, I was struggling for months on the bus, and there'd be mornings I'd wake up and just in tears, and Ray would pull my curtain back, and so you're dreaming about your daddy again? I said, yeah, thinking about Dad again. And he really helped me through that time. So Ray Dean Reese, I called him cousin. I don't think I've called him Ray to his face 10 times in my life. Always called him cousin. And whenever I called him right out of the gate, hey, cousin, I'll try to do my best Ray Dean Reese impersonation on the phone. And but one of a kind, just love Ray. And as much as I can testify of that, he's a wonderful man, a wonderful friend.
The second round, when I went back, it was me and him, kind of not against the world, but it was that kind of feeling. And boy, we're just old mountain boys that get one another. And I enjoyed riding with him. We had fun, we laughed, aggravated one another, but we just always had a good time.
Ray was amazing. Ray first showed me how to actually properly shut a door on a bus. You don't slam it, you don't click it, you turn the handle and you pull it and you do it like that. And still to that day, I would always do that until we got pocket doors, and then still close them very close. But he was amazing to travel with. I love him dearly, and he just became one of my best buddies, and still is to this day. And he's another one that really kind of shaped the way I thought, the way you're supposed to present yourself, and really do show that integrity to the people and to the fans, and people would come out and be that way. So he was fun to travel with, and a wealth of knowledge.
I don't think there's anybody that can fill Ray's shoes, and I've never, so many people have come up to me and said, what does it take to fill Ray's shoes? And I just don't think that's possible. So everything that I do is to try to honor what Ray did in the way that he did it. And so little of that, everyone thinks that it's, try to sing like Ray, try to model your voice. So little of it actually comes down to what you see on stage. But I try to embody so much of what Ray did off the stage. He was always around people. He loved people. And you could tell that because people loved Ray and who he was. And if I can, follow in those footsteps, if I can be, half the man that what he was and he is, then I truly think that that's the way that everyone should be out in what we do.
His journey began early, singing with the Masters Quartet at age 14. After returning from military service, he spent 3 years with the Western Carolina-based Silvertones Quartet. This is where he crossed paths with another future Hall of Famer, Martin Cook. Martin invited Ray to the earliest rehearsals of a brand new group forming in the mountains, the Inspirations. Ray sang with them briefly during those formative days, and later would lend his voice to another budding quartet, the Pine Ridge Boys, who would later carve out a legacy of their own. Calvin Runyon eventually returned to the Kingsmen for a brief period, stepping into the bass role. He was followed by Jim McAllister, but everything shifted again in 1971 when Foxy officially became the group's manager. One of Foxy's first moves was simple. He brought Ray Dean Reese back home. That move and the moves that followed would lay the foundation for what many fans still call the golden era of the Kingsmen Quartet. The 1970s, a decade many fans still call one of the greatest, not just for the Kingsmen Quartet, but for gospel music as a whole. It was a time of innovation, expansion, and new voices stepping into the spotlight. J.G. Whitfield, the man who had launched the Florida Boys and the Dixie Echoes, had helped ignite that change with a new publication called Singing News. What began simply as a newspaper in 1969 would soon evolve into the printed voice of Southern gospel music. Its pages would become a who's who of the industry, and still today you can find members of the Kingsmen writing columns or being featured in its many articles. And as a side note, former Kingsmen member Mark Trammell holds the distinction of being the artist who has appeared on the cover of Singing News magazine more times than any other person. But Singing News wasn't the only new creative force shaping the landscape. Mr. Whitfield and Les Beasley of the Florida Boys had unveiled a new weekly television broadcast known as the Gospel Singing Jubilee. Similar to the Bob Poole TV programs that older fans might remember, the Jubilee brought quartet singing into homes all across America, giving gospel music a visual platform like never before. And in the middle of all this change stood Eldridge Fox. Foxy's creative mind was built for a decade just like this. The Kingsmen were poised not just to adapt to the times, they were on the verge of thriving because of them. Between 1970 and 1971, the Kingsmen's roster, once anchored by Jerry Redd, Frank Cutshaw, Eldridge Fox, Ray Reese, and Ray Talley, shifted dramatically. Ray Talley left to pursue the call to pastor. Frank Cutshaw stepped away after an incredible 14-year run. Suddenly, Foxy found himself holding the group together with only Jerry Redd and the newly hired Ray Dean Reese. Until...
Hold it.